Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's class, which is the Winsor and Newton Apple Blossom with the Galleria Acrylic Paint. My name is Tim DePack, and I'm from Winsor and Newton. I'll be your moderator today. I'm being joined by Marla Morrison, who will be your artist instructor for today's class, and she'll be taking you through today's class by providing you information about the products being used, showing you some acrylic painting techniques, all while creating these beautiful apple blossom flowers, while using the Winsor Newton Galleria Acrylic Paint from the Intro to Art 10 Count set. This set is part of the Winsor Newton Intro to Art series of 10 count and 20 count sets, which include Galeria Acrylic, Cotton Watercolor, Witten Oil Color, and Artisan Water Mixable Oil, which retail for $19.99 a piece for the 10 count and $34.99 for the 20 count set. And these sets are great value for those who want to start to build their color palettes. Upon completion of this class, you'll be sent an email with the survey. Please let us know what you thought about the class, how we did, and if there's any particular topics that you'd like to see Marla perform in the future. Please feel free to follow along and paint with Marla, or sit back and relax and enjoy the class. And just as a reminder, the class is being recorded, and within 24 hours, you'll be able to find it on michaels.com or Michael's YouTube channel. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Marla Morrison.
Thanks, Tim. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to be painting this apple blossom with you guys, and I'll look forward to any questions you might have. And we'll have a great time, I think, working on this together, or like Tim said, if you just want to watch and join along that way. So if we'll go to the desk shot, awesome. So a couple of places just to share with you real quickly before we get too far along. If you're on Instagram and you like learning all about different art materials, this is a great site to check out. TFAC-NA, which stands for the Fine Art Collective North America. Talk about lots of Winsor Newton materials, from the Galleria to pencils and watercolor and so on. If you're interested in my personal art journey, you can follow it at Marla Morrison Art, and I'd love to see what you're up to as well. And then the brand of paint, of course, that we're using today is Winsor and Newton. So on Instagram, you can see lots of fun things going on there at Winsor and Newton. And then the website is winsornewton.com. I like to mention that because there's no "and" in the website. So if you have more questions down the road, and Michaels has so many brands to carry, if you can't find everything you need on the Michaels site, you can check out the winsornewton.com for more details if you need to. And then lastly, if you end up making something from the video today, I'd love to see it. If you tag me and then give the hashtag Make It With Michaels and hashtag Michaels Classes, that would be awesome. And if we have time at the end and you've painted, I'd love for us to take a moment to share that with each other. Okay. So this is what we're going to paint. It's a little collection of apple blossoms, and I really wish that we had apple blossom trees or apple trees more frequently around me. I live in North Texas, and I think there is like an apple picking farm farther south, but I don't get to see a lot of apple blossoms in person. But just from exploring the inspiration for this class, I had a great time looking at lots of different samples and examples of apple blossoms. This is what we're going to make. This is the little inspiration photo that I'm going to be working from. Of course, if you have your own that you want to work from, that's fantastic as well. The idea with these classes, at least for me, is that it's supposed to be inspiration. You don't necessarily have to copy exactly what I do, but you certainly can if that's what inspires you. So we're going to be working on this pre-primed canvas. What size was it? Was it 10 by 10? I don't remember offhand. No, 8 by 8 pre-primed canvas. And then we've got the intro set of the Galleria. It's 10 12 milliliter tubes. And that's what I thought was really great, is I was able to make this little painting with 8 colors out of the range, and I still have plenty of paint left over. But of course, because we're doing this demo together, I wanted to unbox a new set and just lay it out for you that way. Galleria is a really good quality acrylic that's quite affordable or accessible. Okay, so you don't have to break the bank to get started with Galleria, but when you're working with it, you'll see that it does everything you need an acrylic painting to do for you. Has a really lovely texture, and I think that it's something that if it's new to you, you will enjoy. I'm trying to remember if I think I only used 8 of the colors, and I didn't use the black. Okay, yep. So these are the colors that, no, I did use the black. Sorry, I mixed it with the brown, sorry. So we'll take, you guys correct me if I'm wrong on this, but these are the 8 I think that I used: the titanium white, processed yellow, cad red hue, processed magenta, processed cyan, permanent green middle, yellow ochre, and Mars black. So the first thing we're going to do is paint the background in kind of like a soft, slightly cloudy sky. It's a very soft kind of cloud effect. So I want to have us do this where we don't get it too saturated with paint, because we want it to get touch dry enough for us to paint on top of it. Okay. So I'm choosing the processed cyan, and I'm going to squeeze some on my palette paper up here. I don't need a ton because, like I said, I don't want to saturate the surface. And then I'm going to get the titanium white. And I kind of just mix it by eye. And so what we'll do, you know, this was let's say this is like a 1/2 inch of color. I'm probably going to just take a small bit of that and then most of the white. I kind of want to see where that, you know, what blue that gets us, because I want to try and get, you know, close to this blue. I'm going to pull a little more white in there.
So the
And then,
set that Marla's using here is perfect for anybody starting off, because it has all your basic / primary colors that you need to make beautiful paintings like this.
definitely, yeah. We had talked in the beginning when Tim and I were discussing this, you know, did I need a larger set? And what I found really cool is, you know, still able to get a large variety of color mixes, but I didn't have to have, you know, every color in the Galleria range. Though that's fun. Artists like that, right? But was not necessary, you know, it's not usually necessary. So I'm adding some more white. I want this to get a little darker. I'm sorry, a little lighter, because as you know, or if you're not, or if you don't know, if you're new to acrylics will dry slightly darker than they are when they're wet. So I want to anticipate that by making this a little bit lighter. So I'm just added a little bit more white. So I think right now I'd probably add about 1/2 teaspoon white to just kind of a pea-size amount of the processed cyan. And I'm taking just a paper towel to wipe my palette knife. This is my favorite mixer. It's by our sister company, Liquitex, but any mixing palette knife will do. I just tend to use a trowel shape for mixing. All right, and then I'm going to take my well-loved Galeria 1-inch brush. It's a synthetic filament brush. It's a really good all-purpose brush for coating canvas. And then, of course, on larger paintings, you know, just doing the painted work itself. But I found it was really helpful for starting this painting. So I just took a small amount on my brush, and I'm really going to dig it into the canvas, because again, we're trying to keep it not too juicy. We want it fairly like a dry brush technique. And I'm a fan of not necessarily feeling like, especially if you're doing a sky, I'm a fan of just showing the brush strokes. But if you want it smoother, you could certainly come in and do that if you want. But I like a little bit more active sky. So I tend to, you know, work at an angle like this just to get a little bit of that variation in the background. And what we're going to do also is, once we get the background coated with the blue, I'm going to add in some more white to suggest some wispy clouds. And you can see too, because I'm going to do that, I'm not too terribly concerned about filling in every, you know, depth of the canvas. I'm letting some of it show through, because that's what we're going to approximate anyways by adding white. And I think too, this is a personal choice, but I think sometimes when you leave a little bit of the canvas showing, it kind of allows the rest of the paint to breathe. I mean, that might seem a little weird, but it's like, it's not, everything's not competing on the surface. There's just some little visual gaps for your piece to exist. So I'm not even going to clean off my brush. I'm just going to scoop up the rest of this white, and I'll just feather in some cloud. Actually, I'm going to take some of that off because I don't want it too juicy. And let's just have, you know, something like this up here. It's going to be subtle. Of course, if you want your clouds a lot more visible, just, you know, let more of the white show. But put one over here and just feather it in. And there we have it. Okay, so can you see how quick and easy that is, just to kind of feather all of that in? And it won't take long for this to get touch dry, but what we're going to do while we're waiting, I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to, just rinse it in some water. And while that's getting touch dry, we're going to mix the colors that we need for the rest of the painting. I'm going to push my palette paper up here. I'll bring this down.
Well, as you're doing that, so
Yeah.
would you say that the coat is light enough so it can dry quicker for you, right? So you don't want to put too much excess on it because you might be waiting too long for that to
Exactly.
dry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. I would say I was using a fairly, like, I didn't dip my brush in any water when I started. It was a dry brush right into the, the Galleria. It's a great texture. So it's already very nice consistency just to begin. Just kind of scrubbed it in the surface, not very juicy, but very quickly it's going to get touch dry. In fact, some areas are already touch dry because it was so thin. Okay. But as
Just
we
so
let,
everybody out there knows, yeah.
what was that?
Just so everybody knows that they're not putting a lot of paint on there,
Yeah, definitely.
Part of it,
Good.
so.
Good. All right. So what I wanted to do, or what I did when I made the first painting, is I started with the leaves and branches. The idea being, it's, I'm using my inspiration piece, but I like the idea of tucking those leaves and branches underneath the blossoms, right? So in order to do that, we're just going to freeform it. I'm not sketching. I'm just kind of free forming in, because that's what's cool about working with botanicals. A lot of times, if you feel like something doesn't look right, just add another leaf, add another bloom. They're very forgiving in that way. So then I'm taking the permanent green middle and I'm squeezing, this is probably half teaspoon, or if you think more linearly, about 1 inch of color squeezed out. And we need more white. We'll use plenty of white for this piece. And I was thankful and a little surprised that I had plenty. So, just know that even though we're using quite a bit of white, it was still enough to make this piece. Okay. And then so there's 3 different greens, mainly 3 different greens. So we've got the permanent green middle. I've got the process yellow. I'm going to put about a pea-size amount of that. And then let's do a little bit of the Mars black. Now you can set up your palette however you like. I'm kind of anticipating, I'm going to mix my 3 greens together, but I don't want to put my black right there. I'm going to put it down here so I can dip into it, because I'm going to need the black for the branches as well. So I just want it down here. About 2 pea-sized dollops of the black. And I think what I'll do, just so we can make this nice as an impasto, I'm not going to use that green. I'm going to add more green to my yellow. So we'll say about 2 more pea-sized amounts of the green next to that yellow. And then I'll add more of my permanent green middle here, about 2 pea-sized amounts, and then I'll add black to that to mix. Okay, so hopefully you guys are with me. Just ask in the chat if I need to repeat anything. Sometimes I, when I sit down, I just kind of do it, and I want to make sure that I'm translating what's going on in my head out loud so you guys can do it with me. All right, so let's mix our lighter green. I'm taking, on the class list, there were 3 palette knives mentioned. Of course, if you don't have those exact 3, that's okay. I just use these because they were handy for getting some of the highlights and leaf shapes. So this is one of the smaller trowel shapes that Liquitex offers. And it's kind of nice also for mixing in a tight space. Like if it's just a little bit easier to mix with this tiny little knife here. And I think by that, I can tell I want to add just a little bit of white to my light green. So I'm just going to dip my palette knife into a tiny little dab of the white, just to punch it, get it a little bit lighter and not making it too lemony. Okay. Don't need a ton of the highlight. I didn't use a ton of this light green. We may need to use more of the permanent green middle, but we'll see. And I think what I did too, can you see how this permanent green middle is what I'd call more of a blue bias green? I want it to skew a little more to the yellow bias. So you could say, I want it to be a little bit warmer. So to do that, I'm going to squeeze out a little bit more of my processed yellow. And I don't want to make it lemony, but I want to just kind of mask some of that blue bias just a little bit, just punch it more into a warmer green. So I'm just, again, taking a tiny amount of the yellow. I'm going to mix it in with this larger amount of the permanent green middle. And hopefully pretty quickly you can see how that warms up that green just a little bit. Okay, and to me, it also helps unify it with this lighter, more kind of lime green that we've mixed. Okay, and then the third green we're going to mix is the darker value. So we're going to take, it's always a good idea if you're adding black to your color to start with a tiny amount, and you can always add more. So I'm talking like bigger, a little bigger than several poppy seeds. This is a really tiny amount of black, and we're going to mix that in, because all you're wanting to do is get that green to become more of a shade. Just darken down just a little bit, and it's doing it nicely. But I think for more contrast, I want just a tiny bit more black. So I'm going to do that same, just a teeny tiny little speck of black there. And you can see how it kind of turns it into like a deeper olive green. And you can also see too, as I'm mixing, the lovely texture of the Galeria. It's like a nice, it's not too thin, not too thick. And what's really cool is when you work, whatever texture you paint on there is going to stay. Okay, so it's great for this impasto kind of look, which I don't know if you can see in the light here, but you'll see it if you're painting along. All right, so I think this is pretty much ready to go. I'm just going to gently tap it in several places, and you can see that's green. The blue is not coming up on my finger, so I think we're ready to go. And the way we may have to mix up more green, but the way I started this piece was with making the leaves with this more diamond shaped palette knife. Now, if you've never used a knife like this, I'll show you what it's great for. It's great for making these leaves with a center kind of implied vein. So let's take the blue, since I'm not going to use that anytime soon. And I'm going to scoop up some of the blue. And just on this test piece, you can see how when I draw that down, it looks like a leaf, just like that, right? Doesn't take a lot of effort, just a little bit of color, the right shaped knife, and just scraping it downward. Okay, and all of that I'm scraping down the point, and it's creating that leaf shape. So we're going to do that with the green. Okay,
That's really cool, Marla. Like if you pick there's so many different shapes of knives, but that particular one was perfect for the leaf shape that you're doing on that. It takes a whole guesswork out of picking and painting like that when you're letting the knife do the work for you, right? That's perfect.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely the thing. It's like you can wrestle with tools and get them to do what you want, but man, is it nice when you can get tools to work for you. And having various knives handy, oh man, it's a great way to experiment, especially if you want to hold the shape and body of the whatever you're painting. So let's kind of look at I'm going to use the painting as kind of the inspiration now. So I've got 3 or 4 kind of sections of the green. I'm going to just kind of visually eyeball that where I want them to go, because like I said, we're going to start with the leaves and then add the blooms on top. And I'm starting with the leaves first, because then I can always come in with the brush and connect to the branches. All right. So let's do this. And don't be afraid to turn the canvas as needed to make it easier. Like I may turn my wrist, but there might be times where I'm just going to turn the canvas depending on what I think is going to be more effective. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to start with the deepest green color. And you want enough color, okay? But if you feel like, let's put it this way, if you haven't used a knife like this, maybe try it on a little scrap of paper just so you can get a good feel for it. But you don't need a ton of color, and you can always add more. So I've found that if you get too much color, then that beautiful kind of leaf point that you get is a little less defined. Okay, like I said, you can always add more if needed. All right, so let's put a dark leaf here. I'm gonna curve it just a little bit. Okay, and we'll put another dark leaf next to it. And let's put one over here. And you can also tilt the knife in various ways if you want like a leaf that, for example, like this one isn't a full flat leaf. So I'm going to tilt my knife slightly. So I'm kind of working more on an edge, but I'm still dragging the point. Okay. And it's not, it's not about perfection. It's about kind of getting these leaves roughed in that give the bones or the structure of the painting. All right, so we'll put another one up here. And I'm running out of my dark green, so I think maybe I'll probably mix a little more because I'm going to want to make sure I have enough for adding more as I need it. Let's get one more kind of structural leaf here. And this is what I do sometimes if I don't want to turn the canvas. I'll use both hands to stabilize the knife if I need to. So don't ever worry if you need to do that. So to get the smaller leaf, I didn't press down as hard. I just kind of used the tip to drag it because I just want a little bit smaller one, and I want a little smaller one up here. Okay, that's pretty light. I need to probably mix more color here, or scrape. I can scrape it on here and do it again. There we go. Okay. So any questions on that? Are you guys good with that so far? All right.
Everybody's good.
Good.
Questions. If there are questions, please let us know. Put it in the chat and we'll address them for you.
Yes. So now let's go to the middle tone green. Do the same thing, just scoop some on the top tip of the knife. And I'm going to do a bit of a larger leaf here. And let's have another one here. And these are really fun. Once you feel confident with it, you can just, do a whole bunch of leaves all over the place as you want. And we'll put, let's actually have, well, I'm going to flip that. I'm going to put this one down here. And I have a decent amount there, and I'll put another permanent green middle leaf here. And you see how there's excess paint here? I'm going to clean that off a little because I want it to be a cleaner point. So you see how I just kind of I touched some of the paint back off onto the palette paper. And then I'm going to use my other finger to help stabilize it and push it down that way. And then we're going to do one little point of a leaf down here. Okay. And then we have another kind of structural leaf up here. Again, I'm turning it, and I'm going to use my hands to help each other. All right, so you can see how it's coming together. And we're going to put another leaf there. And another one here. And let's do, I'm not a lefty. I'm definitely not a lefty, but I'll use my right hand to help me. Another little one there. Okay, now you'll notice there are some small leaves around the buds. I actually am going to put those in after I do the branches. I'm really just doing the larger, more what I'm calling structural leaves, or the bones of the painting, the foundation of it. Okay, so when I do the branches then and then the blooms, then I'll probably do these tinier leaves the last step. Okay, but I'm looking at that. I think I'm good with that. I think I'm ready for the branches now. So we need to mix up the brown that we're going to use. I've already got my black out, and this is where your yellow ochre is going to come in. I'm going to put it right by the black. Don't need a ton, so kind of a large pea size amount of the yellow ochre. And then we'll use my, I'm going to use the tiny palette knife. And again, I'm going to just add a tiny amount of black to the yellow ochre, very tiny amount. And mix. So you can see that's getting to be a light brown. I want a darker brown, so I'll just add a little more black. It's always easier to add more than to try and get rid of too much black or a darker value color that you've added. Now, one other thing too that you can do just to kind of make the mix a little more chromatic, meaning more than just adding black. Since we have some of the blue up here, I'm going to take, if you have some blue left over, I'm going to take just a small pea-sized amount of that blue, and I'm going to mix it in here. That's going to make that yellow ochre go slightly more greenish. And to my eye, that helps tie it in with the leaves a little better. But it's still not the brown I'm looking for. So I'm going to add a little bit more black. And I just kind of do this until it sits right with me. Like, okay, that seems right. Okay. So let's get another little touch. So now, what was that? 4 little dabs of black now, and then 1 dab of blue. That's probably pretty good for what we want here, because it is going to darken down a little bit as it dries. Okay. And then I'm just going to hold it up here and see what I think. I think that's good. All right. So we've got kind of our warm brown. And then this is where I'm going to take my Galeria brush, the short flat size 4, the same series of brush as my larger Galeria, same filaments, just and very similar head shape, just smaller. Okay. I like the flats a lot because you can cover area with the wide side, but with a nice flat edge, it's a good way to do line work as you need to. So as we look at this piece, I've got a few little connector branches. I'm probably going to just paint longer than they really will need to be. And see here, this is one branch where I may come in with more green, you know, after the branch goes in, just to kind of, you can see how this, a lot of the leaves have extra green on top. That's what we're going to play with after we do the blooms. Okay. So just take some of that brown on my brush. Oh, and there's a little bud here that has a branch sticking off. So I'm going to just make my branch right about here. Okay, and then we'll connect this leaf to a branch. Okay, I'm just using the tip of my brush to do that. And then I would like to have another pair of blooms coming out of the center in between these 2 green leaves. So I'm just, again, using the tip of the brush to do that. I think I'm sorry, I'm touching my phone with the with the long handle of the brush. That's a video hazard. But okay. And then I've got some branch up here. And we'll put another one another little one there. And you can see that the Galleria is perfect for the knife work and the brush work. I don't have to add any water to the Galleria to get it to flow nicely right off the brush, which is handy because when you don't, I mean, with acrylics, you use water to clean your brush, right? And you can add water, but when you add water, you're going to dilute the brilliance of the color. So I appreciate the fact that I don't have to add water to get it to be, you know, brushable, workable. I can just use it straight out of the tube. No water required. And then we'll do another here because I'm going to have a little cluster of buds up there. Again, everything can be adjusted as needed as we do kind of layers on here, but I think that pretty much mirrors where I wanted the branches. So now I'm going to take my brush and rinse it out, put it to the side. All right, now time for the blooms. So what we're going to do is we have 2 reds and white that are going to make the petals of the bloom, and then we're going to have yellow for the center. And so we'll mix up the reds, and then this is pure white, just kind of wet on wet into the pink. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start squeezing those out. I've got the cadmium red hue. And you can see hopefully that is a more of a yellow bias red or a warmer red. Okay. What I mainly use for the blooms is the process magenta, which is a cooler red or more of a blue bias red. So the color right out of the tube is called the mass tone. And I don't know if you can see a lot. I mean, hopefully you can see some difference in the mass tone. This is warmer, this is cooler, more of a yellow bias here and more of a blue bias here. That's why in even a small set like this, you have these 2 reds, because when you mix them with white or with other colors, they will skew differently in the mixes that you make. So it's nice to have that choice. Do I want a warm red, cool red? You know, what's going to work best for this particular painting. All right, so where did my little, there it is. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll take some of this white that I've had hanging up here. And let's see what it gets us if I do 1 part of the process magenta to 1 part white. Let's see if that is going to be maybe, it's a little bit darker than my middle tone. But what we can do is we'll save that for part on the bud. And we'll scoop some of it to the side and we'll just add more white. The reason I'm not going to add a ton of white to that entire amount is I don't, you know, it's going to use a ton of white and we don't necessarily need to do that. So all I did there is I divided it in half. I'll use part of this for one of the values of red, and I'll use this part to add more white. So I'm going to scoop up every bit that's left there and I'm going to add some more out of the tube. Probably, like a large pea, another large pea size amount, and mix that up. And this will probably be the main, like when you look at it, most of the bloom will be this soft pink made from the process magenta and white. Okay. I'm saving the cadmium for some of the kind of showcasing of the buds. And we'll probably mix it with just a touch of the process magenta, just to kind of keep it more unified. All right, so we've got that. We've got, I need to squeeze out more white just to use to help integrate or give highlights to the blooms. Because if we look at that reference photo again, you can see that the light hitting it makes it look white. Of course, we're just using this as inspiration, and you can do it however you want in your own piece. But I really liked how the light would make it look white in some areas and allow the pink to show through in others. Okay, so I've got that mix. And now this is where I'm going to switch to my larger trowel shape with the rounded tip, because that rounded tip is going to be nice for getting the more rounded bloom, right? So you can see how that makes it very easy to get a rounded bloom shape. So that's why we're going to use this one. Okay. That over here. All right. And what we'll do is I'm going to start to the side and then work to the center, because you can see as it gets to the center, this one overlaps all of the other blooms. So I'm going to save that till the end. These are on top of the leaves. And this is a case where my leaves aren't going to be dry, but I'm going to make sure I use enough of the pink on top, and I'm not going to press down too hard. So it's just going to sit on top. I don't have to worry that it's not dry. Because I'm using thick texture paint, I can just place it on there and let it be. Okay, so got like a large pea size amount on my palette knife, and I'm going to put a little bloom dab here. Oh, and I just love doing that. It's just so cool. It's just one little knife stroke, and all of a sudden you've got the beginning of a flower, right? And then let's do one here. And let's do another, connect these here. Now I scrape back, there's a little bit of green there. If I don't like that, I can just come in gently with more pink on top. And let's add here. Now, for variety's sake, I'm not even going to clean my knife. Sorry, I'm off screen here. I'm not even going to clean my knife. I'm going to dip it into this darker pink, and I'm just going to make this petal dark. And I love how they just mix right like that. I like the variety of that. So there's a word for it. I mean, it's kind of like it's wet on wet, because even though it's not like watercolor wet on wet, it's thicker paint wet on wet, but I like how they're mixing with each other on the canvas or on the surface. Okay, so I'm starting to connect up these shapes. Now I want to probably add some more bloom down here. So we'll do that. And two, something that I think is a nice idea, because when you look at a bunch of flowers, you can see the sky peeping through at different points, right? I'm not trying to get super realistic, and I'm not going to leave the sky exactly showing at all the right points, so to speak. But I'm not going to worry about filling in every single bit with flower, because even though this maybe this little peep of blue showing through isn't exactly logical, I think it reads well enough for our eye to say, oh yeah, those are not, it's not one big mass of pink. These are little clusters, and the sky is behind it and that kind of thing. So if that makes sense. My dog just tried to get in there. He thudded on the door. All right. So we'll add another one here. And let's do this here. Now, if it starts to get too lost for you, what you can do, like if this is starting to look like, oh, they're all the same, what you can do is dip your knife into some white and showcase a few of them. And all of a sudden that petal is brought to the front. And here I want to showcase this one. So I'm just going to gently stroke the palette knife on the side, just like that. Does that make sense? Just added white, and I just scooped it right on the side. Okay. And I'll do the same to this little one up here that I added the darker pink. I'm just going to add a little dollop of white. And let's keep moving across here. So we'll add another one here. Make it a little bit wider. And then I've got like a little cluster of tiny baby blooms here that I want to redo or make sure I keep in here. And I'm going to turn my knife in different directions too, because that adds interest and variety, just like when we were seeing a cluster of flowers. And I'm adding some white here to get that wet on wet look. And I'm going to come in on here. I don't like how that looks so stark, so I'm just going to quickly blend it like that. So this is where you really start to get that action interaction with the painting, where you're responding directly. I'm putting this down. Do I like it? I'm going to put something else on top. And to me, this is where the real flow of the painting comes, because again, I'm working from inspiration. I'm not trying to make it look exactly like what I see, but I want to get that feel of blooms on a branch. So now I think what I'm gonna do, no, let me do these. So I've got the baby blooms. I'm gonna try and tilt the petal here to look like it's on its side a little bit. So in order to do that, I'm just pressing down and turning the knife so it makes almost more like a teardrop shape. So it's a matter of pressing down and just turning on angle. And that kind of gives the implication that, okay, I'm seeing this bloom from the side, and how I overlap it too will help give that appearance. And now I'm going to actually turn my canvas, because what I want to do here is create a bit bigger bloom and spread it out that way. And you can see I got pink where it doesn't really look like part of the bloom. That's okay, because I'm going to put I'm going to put the larger flower all around here. Okay. So if that happens to you, you're working, you get a little blip where you didn't want it, don't worry. It's probably going to be covered up by another flower, or you can make that happen very easily. All right. I want to add my little bud here. The buds are fun. They're just a little dollop of the color. And I think now we're going to tackle the big bloom. So I think I need a little bit more of my pink. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that darker pink that I'd mixed before. And I'm going to take some of my white and just mix it up. So you can see how I'm just kind of working loosely. I'm not terribly concerned about proportion, because this is natural, light's hitting the blooms in all different ways. So any variation is going to, I'm using the same colors, and I don't think it's going to be too shocking if I don't exactly mix it up completely like the original mix. But I'm getting pretty close here. So I guess I think of taking the two parent colors and making more of the child color, right? Mixing these two together again. So now what I'll do is I'm going to scoop up a good amount of that pink. And in order to get the larger central bloom, I'm going to be doing kind of more of a drag kind of scoop to the side. And we're going to make it stand out more with white, but I want to kind of flesh it in first. So drag, scoop to the side. I'll turn it. Drag and scoop to the side. And there are 5 petals. So since this is one big bloom, I want to make sure I stay true to that. So 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to have number 4 here. 5 petals on an apple blossom is what I meant to say. And then we're going to put 1 at the top there. And you can see I was just going to cover right over that one we did, just to show that natural overlap. And I'm going to scrape up every bit of that pink, take some more off my palette knife, because I want to make sure that that's too big of a blue spot for me. So I'm just going to add a little tiny bloom just to kind of help mask that. I'll take my palette knife and clean it a bit. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to add white back over the large bloom. And I think of this as just gently kind of dabbing the white on the wet pink and allowing it to gently mix with the pink underneath. You can see it doesn't matter that that green is under there, because I'm just covering it with my white. And we'll do this again here. And so you just kind of play with it till it looks in your mind's eye what you think reads as the blossom. Okay. And then the final step we'll do is we'll add a little bit of that cad red on top, but I still want to block in a couple more of the pink blooms, and I need to mix some more pink of that lighter pink. So again, I'll just take about 1 part of the darker pink and 1 part white, mix it up a bit more. Just adjust as you go. And yeah, because I need to add a couple of buds down here. Let's do this. I'm going to actually turn my canvas. Classic. I got black all over my finger there. Okay. Turn my canvas. And we'll do, this is like a bud that's starting to open a little bit. And then this is like a mini little side bud. So it's all about how heavy or light-handed you are with the palette knife and how you turn it. Very much like a brush, it's just instead of a brush, it's a piece of metal, right? So you're just kind of using your wrist and how you turn it to get different looks to whatever you're painting. Now, in this piece I don't have a flower here, but you know what? I think I want to put a little bud or something there just to kind of integrate the leaves together. And I'll make this look like it's from the side. Okay. So now to kind of get that, I need some more white. So just about another pea-size amount of white. And we'll just add that here. And you can see I'm not adding it uniformly to every petal because I'm kind of just suggesting a bit of that highlight. We'll add a little bit here. I'll use just the tip and gently feather that on. Now let's go to some of my mid pink here. I'll add a little bit to the bud. I think it's where the blooms come alive is where you add the highlights and the lower lights, the deeper color. So back to this bloom, I'm going to add this darker pink that we mixed at the very beginning, that processed magenta and white, and add a little bit of that there. And I want some of that darker pink in my main bloom, so I'll put it here. And if that's not blended enough, I just wipe off my knife and I just encourage it to blend a little more. And if that still doesn't look quite like I want, I'll just pick up some white and try again. That's what's cool about working wet on wet is it's kind of like you're just encouraging the paint to interact on the canvas rather than mixing it on the palette itself. So from my buds up top, I'm going to use a mix of that lighter pink and darker pink, partly because I just want it a little darker. I'm being a little stingy with my paint right now. Sorry about that. But the good news is if you're following my proportions, you'll have lots of paint left over.
I was just going to say that. I mean, you have a good amount of paint that you use on the canvas, and I'm sure you still have a lot of that left over in those tubes. So
yeah,
really good value in those tubes. You can get a lot small size. You can get a lot out of it.
Yeah, and this even has texture, so it's not like I'm scraping, making it all super thin. It has a lot of texture to it. So
I think the thing too is the size of the tube with the nozzle that's coming out is allowing you to control how much you're using as well.
Definitely.
You're not squeezing a bunch out, too much at one time. So
exactly. All right. So this
have one other comment. I think your
yeah.
petals on that are beautiful. They're dimensional, but they're very soft with using the Galeria paint. There looks like there's no hard edges. They look fluffy.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's a lot of the credit to the paint because see in the light here, there we go. You can see how that's just when you press down gently with the knife, that paint just kind of bulges on the edge. And that's where you get that really soft kind of, I don't know, pillowy effect. So yeah, it's a really good texture because sometimes paints are thicker and that's great, but the edge won't soften. It will be a little harsher unless you really work with it and smooth it out. So if you like that smooth edge, this is a good texture for you because yeah, in my experience with other acrylics, not all of them have that kind of softer rounded edge that you get with knife work. So here, I feel like there's something needed there. So what we're going to do, this is going to be different. I want to have a little bud come off there. So I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to get in the brown here, and I'm just going to add a little bud, and I'm going to try not to mess up the wet bloom that I have. If I do, I can correct it, but I just want to kind of put something in that little spot there. All right, and then we'll add a bud there with some of my paint that I have left. All right, because what we'll do now with some of these buds is we can add the cadmium red, and we're going to add just a touch of the processed magenta. So let me, oh, I lost the cap. I'll squeeze that out. And I'm weird. I leave it and then I like to move it somewhere else, but I guess sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. But I took about a pea-size amount of the cad red, and I'll take a little bit smaller pea-size amount of the processed magenta. I do that just to integrate that cadmium red a little bit more with the bloom that's already there. But I like the vibrancy of that cadmium in contrast with the processed magenta. Okay, so here, like, I'm going to put just the tiniest little amount. And then here I'll put just move my piece. I'll just turn it ever so slightly and do, I don't even care that it had that. I like that kind of happy accident that happened there, because I wasn't, I'm just trying to give a little hint or a kiss of a different color, but I'm not trying to make it look super graphic. It's just supposed to be a little more painterly, right? And so let's add a little bit here. You can work with it a little bit and soften it as needed. And then I've got more. Oh, let me get my paper towel here. I'll get more on the edge here. And just kind of blend that in a little bit. And we'll do maybe a little kind of, it's almost like a stripe, because there are veins and things in the blooms. You see, I know I'm getting white on my knife and it's kind of just blending nicely there. So you can do as much or as little of that as you want, but I think it just kind of helps make different blooms stand out a little bit. And then we'll add a little deeper accent here. And I'm going to take a little white and add it, because I want a little more of a visual. I want a little more of a blend. So I'm mixing that up a bit. And then I want these buds to have a tiny touch of that red. Okay, and as I'm working, I'm constantly kind of looking at the surface here and trying to visualize, do I think, is this where I wanted to go? How is this looking? I can see that it's funny how whenever I do the paintings more than once, it's like, different day, different painting, but I'm feeling pretty good about how it's coming together here. Okay, so now let's look at the center of the flower, and then we might have time to see if any of you painted on your own. So here's the processed yellow. I need a little bit more of it. I still have some white. What I did for the centers is I used some of the processed yellow right out of the tube, and then I mixed some with white. So let me do that real quick. I'll take just a little bit of my white. I would say half. You don't need a lot, so it's just like a half a pea of each white and the yellow. Ooh, that's just a pretty color right there. Okay, and then what I like to do for little centers like this is I'll just use the end of my brush. So I'm going to dip it in the processed yellow, and I'll just quickly kind of dab it in the center. And I wipe my brush handle each time. And it's always funny to me how those little dots really set off and make it look even more, like the bloom that you would imagine. So we'll have a little bit of the processed yellow. Now, I think this one we'll put here. Maybe one more dot in the big one. And I think now I'm going to go to the one tinted white. And just add a few more dabs. You can cover over some of the yellow too, if you want. But I just think that's a nice way to suggest the center of the bloom. And I don't want to leave that hanging. So let me get my small, if I have any more green, yeah, let's do that real quick. I mentioned I wanted to add some highlights. So back to the green. This is the light green. I'm going to take it on my smallest knife, and now I'm just going to gently add that to various parts of the leaves where I want to give the leaves a bit of a highlight too. And again, this is just up to what you think visually makes sense, what looks good. This is a case where I'm going to add just a tiny little touch to each of the buds. And just kind of, it helps kind of center them on the branch. And if I want to connect that branch a little bit more, I can take this light green and just feather it out from that leaf. And so it covers it a bit more. And let's see, can add some of my mid-tone in between. So now it's just playing with some of those little details that help make it stand out and add more color variety. And I find with palette knife work, you can move your wrist, but I think a lot of times it's just easier to move your canvas to get that tip where you want it. Like I want to come in here and just add a nice little highlight there. So I'll move it around that way. And let's give this little bud some grounding. Some of my darker green. And I think we're just about there. So if you painted with me, please get ready. I would love to see, Tim, if you think there's time.
Yes, I think we would love to see those at home that are painting with us. To see if you care to show on the screen in a couple seconds. We'll put the spotlight up so Marla can take a look as well and see how everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I always love seeing how you guys interpret.
And as you're doing this, I put in the chat a couple of times. We'd love to see your work, so definitely put the hashtags in there and the tags and stuff like that. Post it on your Instagram sites for everybody else to see. I see Morna has a very nice picture up on her screen right now. She's holding up already. Beautiful, beautiful work.
Where is, so do I go to gallery view somehow? Yeah, there we go. I want to see what.
Okay, so I can spotlight. I'm gonna name, give the name before I spotlight you guys, so I don't take you by surprise. So here we go with Morna.
Beautiful. Oh, I love it.
Then here's
Very
Tanya.
nice. Oh, it's so pretty seeing all the bouquets popping up. Very cool.
And Brandy.
Oh, Lisa, I like how you did your own thing. That's cool.
And Diane.
Rebecca, Kimberly, nice. Betsy, Stephanie.
Betsy.
Beautiful work, everyone.
Yeah, really great.
And Elite.
Oh, Jen, nice.
Two. There we got two there.
And Sarah. Oh, wait, 1 second. Sarah.
Candle.
Very fun.
And Alexa.
Love it.
Jen.
Nice, Jen.
Great job, Jen.
And I think that is it. Now, 1 second. Let me find. Okay, there we are.
Awesome, guys. That was so cool. Thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. Very fun. Well, I hope you had a great relaxing time like I did. That was always get into the zone, painting with others like that. And you know, if you have questions, always feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me on Instagram and I can help you if you have any tech questions. And you know, I look forward to seeing what you got. If you end up posting this, I look forward to seeing it. So thanks so much for spending your evening with me painting. Tim, I don't know if you have anything you want to say, but
Same thing. I want to say thank you to everybody. I know it's a little late, depending on where you are in the country or in the world, but we really appreciate everyone staying with us tonight at a different time that we normally do these classes. So thank you all and look forward to seeing you in the future in our other classes.
awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.